On behalf of the Teachers Federation, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for participating in today's activities. But more importantly than me thanking you, it'll be the parents and students in New South Wales who in the years to come thank you for ensuring that by your actions there are sufficient numbers of appropriately qualified teachers to stand in front of every classroom in New South Wales.
On the 24th of May this year, the O'Farrell government introduced into Parliament legislation which radically changed the conditions under which all public sector workers, including teachers, are employed. The laws leave us with fewer rights than any other worker in the state. The response was immediate. On the 1st of June, a rally of workers from across the public sector took place in Macquarie Street. Teacher Mark Yankovic addressed the rally and explained the importance for teachers.
Conditions and wages at the whim of a minister? No way. This proposition is rejected by my teaching colleagues. We're ready to stand with our unionist brothers and sisters in order to defeat this, whatever it takes.
It isn't only teachers who are affected.
It will be the biggest fundamental attack on workers' rights in the state of New South Wales for over 100 years. What it's about is taking away the basic rights of public sector workers to have their claims for fair wages and conditions in this state heard, unfettered, before the independent umpire. The right to arbitration.
Teachers from Federation State Council were back again on Saturday, 4th of June.
I believe it's important for us to be fighting as new scheme teachers to keep our working conditions for the future. If we don't have working conditions for our new scheme teachers, what's going to attract them to the profession?
It's not just the pay cut that teachers will get under O'Farrell's government, it's also about the students. Not even class sizes are protected under this legislation.
Teachers, along with their nurse, firefighter, ambulance, hospital and all other public sector workers, were back in Macquarie Street on Wednesday 15th of June. This rally filled the street outside Parliament House.
Teachers are angry, other public sector workers are angry, and they'll be back again here if necessary, and they'll be back again and again until this disgraceful legislation is overturned.
Teachers were back again on July 5th, this time in Farrer Place. They again expressed their anger with the Premier and his government with chants, banners, signs and songs.
At a time where energy and investment should be aimed at plans to address the mass exodus of those teachers reaching retirement age, this policy, in taking away our bargaining rights, putting at risk our hard fought for conditions and cutting our pay will do nothing. It will do nothing to attract and retain those teachers that we urgently require to replace those gone. The ones that are actually going to pay the price for all of this is not just teachers, it's not just public sector workers, but it's going to be those kids sitting in my classroom, because it's going to mean that there's going to be bigger class sizes, there's going to be less time for teachers to actually plan for them, and they're the ones that are going to be really taking the brunt of the impact of this ridiculous policy.
I think it's very important that we have country teachers represented here as well as our city colleagues. We are as outraged as anybody in the public sector at these proposed changes. We believe very strongly Mr O'Farrell does not have a mandate for this. As an older teacher, I don't want to leave my profession to the younger upcoming teachers and teachers yet to be recruited with less working conditions and rights than I've had throughout my career. It's wrong. We have to change it.
It's because it's going to impact on education system of the future. It's going to impact on the kids in our classrooms and the teachers and attracting new teachers to the system. And if we don't fix this policy, we're not going to be able to maintain a quality public education system that we have in this state at the moment.
Throughout June, July and August, teachers joined their colleagues throughout the public sector in rallies right across the state. Today, all across New South Wales, teachers are striking for 24 hours in order to demonstrate the crucial importance of the public services which the people of this state expect, as well as to show complete opposition to the unprecedented attacks by the government on public sector workers. Earlier this week, Bob Lipscomb spoke about the issue.
The government's given us little option about taking action because, unlike previous situations, we don't even have the chance to go before an independent umpire. In the past, every public sector worker in New South Wales has been expected to negotiate through their union with the employer, the particular government department, and then if they can't reach agreement, then take the matter to the Industrial Relations Commission in New South Wales. Under the legislation passed by this government in the last few months, that right has been removed. So if we enter into negotiations with the government now, it's on their terms completely. It's about 2.5% fully funded, with any increase above and beyond that to be taken from teachers' working conditions. For us, of course, that means that we can agree to increase class sizes, for example, or we can agree to increase your face-to-face teaching, or we can agree that you will pick up the load that's created by teachers who are absent through some form of leave, sick leave or other form of leave. None of those options, of course, are acceptable to the New South Wales Teachers Federation, nor would they be acceptable to any teacher in New South Wales. Such changes, of course, will not only impact adversely on you as teachers in this community, not only would they undermine your working conditions, but they clearly would undermine the learning conditions of the students in our classrooms. An increase in face-to-face teaching, for example, would mean that there'd be less time available to support students and do the myriad of other tasks which teachers are expected to do in TAFE colleges and schools each and every day to support what they do in the classroom. If we were to agree to an increase in class sizes, 1, 2 or 3 students additional in each class in primary, secondary or TAFE colleges, again, it would mean we have less time to support those students and less opportunity to actually provide the quality education all of us want to provide for those young people in our classes. The government, of course, has the upper hand with this legislation. If we disagree with these matters, they can go before the Industrial Relations Commission and still argue for an increase for teachers. So later this year, for example, we may be in a position where we're saying no to these sort of changes to our working conditions and learning conditions of students. We may be saying that we're not prepared to barter anything for an increase above 2.5%. We might even, in some strange moment, say that 2.5% is enough. Not that we're likely to do that. But if we were to do that, the option is still there for the government to go before the Commission and argue that we should get an increase above and beyond the 2.5%. They could, for example, argue that we should be given 3.5% per annum over the next 3 years. Under those circumstances, the only role of the Industrial Relations Commission would be to determine whether or not what the government proposed to use to pay for that was sufficient to cover the cost of that increase. So the government could say that they wanted to increase class sizes by 3, for example. Anyone who's even moderately mathematically talented could work out that an increase of 3 students in each every class across the state in schools and TAFE colleges and other workplaces would provide the government with savings which would be far in excess of anything needed to fund a 1% additional increase. However, the only role for the Commission under those circumstances would be to determine, yes, it does cover the cost, and then allow the government to proceed down that path. So even if we were to refuse any increases above 2.5% later this year, that would not protect our working conditions, would not protect the learning conditions of our students. What makes this particularly critical, of course, is that we're facing shortages of teachers in the years to come. In 2008, for example, the Auditor-General in New South Wales issued a report on the ageing of the teaching service. In that report, the Auditor-General indicated that between that period and 2016, some 50% of teachers would reach retirement age and leave the profession. Over the next few years, we clearly have to recruit thousands upon thousands of new teachers. Not only do we have to recruit them, we actually have to retain them in our system. And if you attack wages, you attack conditions, you attack the very environment in which teachers wish to provide the sort of quality education for students that we all want to provide, then we're not going to be able to attract them, nor are we going to be able to retain those teachers in our system. Of course, the dispute goes wider than just teachers. As important as it is for teachers, as important as it is for our students, it goes wider than that. These conditions that the government's put in place apply to all public sector workers. And over the next few years, we're going to face real challenges providing the sort of services that, again, all of us expect across the breadth of the state. We expect them from the police, we expect them from the firefighters, we expect them from the nurses, we expect them from the other health workers. In fact, we expect them from a whole range of people who provide those sort of community services in our towns and cities across New South Wales. With less attractive conditions, with nearly all public servants now facing real pay cuts, unless they're prepared to sacrifice significant working conditions, there'll be great difficulty in actually recruiting and retaining the sort of people we need to provide those services in New South Wales, and everyone will be the poorer for it. It's also interesting to consider this government's policies. Initially, they announced that they needed to find savings to fund a black hole in the budget. They in fact commissioned a person, Michael Lambert, who'd been a head of the Treasury under previous Liberal and Labor governments, to assess the so-called black hole that Barry O'Farrell announced he discovered immediately following the election. Mr O'Farrell announced that black hole exceeded $4.5 billion and placed the economy of New South Wales in a parlour state. Unfortunately for him, Michael Lambert, after assessing the figures provided to him by Barry O'Farrell, determined that there was no such black hole. In fact, he said if you want to look at the shortfall in the state budget over the period of time which Mr O'Farrell had referred to, it was the order of about $1.9 billion. And whilst that sounds like a very significant sum of money, in terms of the government expenditure anticipated over that period of time, it represents less than 1% of the budget. And he said it's an entirely manageable figure. He even went on to say that the 1.9 billion may be little more than a rounding error on the very large sums that one's asked to consider when looking at budgets over a number of years. And so with that gone, of course, most recently we had the Minister for Finance in New South Wales, Mr Greg Pearce, on the 21st of August in the Sunday Telegraph. He no longer referred to the black hole and the need to fund the black hole in New South Wales, and no longer referred to that as a reason for cutting public sector wages, but instead it was about providing savings to government over 4 years, and I stress over 4 years, so this isn't a short-term policy of the government that's only going to apply for a year or two. He said over 4 years, as a result of this policy, as a result of freezing public sector wages at the 2.5%, then the government would save the order of about $1.96 billion to fund infrastructure in the state. What that essentially means is that teachers, nurses, police, firefighters, government bus drivers and other public sector workers are being asked to pay twice for government policies in New South Wales. They're being asked to pay once as taxpayers and citizens in the state, along with everyone else, but they're being asked to pay a second time. And this time, this second tax, if you like, this second payment's to come directly from the wages, the income of you and your families over that period of time. So they're seeking to transfer $1.96 billion from your wages across to fund infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is clearly important, but it's important that it be shared by everyone, not that teachers and other public sector workers be expected to pay twice.
Bob reinforced this message at a media conference on the 6th of September.
Under this government policy, there's only one way to get increases above and beyond the 2.5% for teachers, and that is to trade off working conditions of teachers. The only working conditions we could possibly trade off, which would fund any additional increase, would impact very severely on our students in schools and TAFE colleges in this state. The only sort of working conditions we could put on the deck to fund even a 1% additional increase under this government policy would mean an increase in class sizes for our students in our schools and colleges, or would mean an increase in face-to-face teaching for teachers and far less time being available to support young people in our schools and colleges. The only other measure that could be put on the deck, if you want to come to look at savings that could provide additional increase, would be to agree not to replace absent teachers when they're away on sick leave or other forms of leave. And again, no parent would thank us in the years to come for not having a qualified teacher in front of their class. No parent would thank us when a teacher happens to be off sick is not replaced by an appropriately qualified teacher in the classroom. So this action, say, is being taken reluctantly. It is about teachers' incomes, but more importantly, it's about protecting the public sector in New South Wales and supporting our students in our schools to ensure that they don't suffer as a result of very poor government policy.